Season 1984-85, Canon Division 4, 21st sought re-election, Milk Cup second round, FA Cup second round. Halifax Town need not have worried at the Football League's annual meeting on the 8th of June, though there was no real glory in it. Town and Chester each polled a maximum 52 votes. Rochdale 50 and Hartlepool 32 were also re-elected, whilst the challenge of Maidstone was eventually overlooked as they received just 22 votes. A relieved Mickey Bullock said, "Now I can get on with the business of getting players." But having had to have released so many of his best, he now found himself locked in a battle to keep fan favourite Paul Hendry. Bullock had been told to trim the wage bill. He now asked Hendry to take a £1,000 per annum pay cut. Hendry couldn't afford it, refusing to re-sign, and eventually moved to Stockport for £1,500. The amount settled by tribunal after Bullock had valued him at £5,000. Also to reject new terms was Keith Nobbs, who moved back to the north-east with Hartlepool. Bullock's new signings were a contrasting but affordable mix of kids and veterans. Defender Alan Nill, Southampton, midfielder Chris Moises, Lincoln City, and forwards Simon Lowe, Barnsley, and Paul Sanderson, Chester, all brought limited Football League experience. Defender Cyril Podd and Gary Watson, both from Bradford City. Podd had made a record 502 league appearances for the Bantams, winning the twilight years of their careers. So too, it has to be said, were Billy Eyre, who rejoined the club in his old capacity as player coach, having been released by Mansfield Town, and former Manchester United and Republic of Ireland international keeper Paddy Roach. He was signed from Brentford, yet despite being 33, Roach would probably display the best form of his career with the Shaymen. Halifax announced new club sponsors as Maidley's, the DIY company, but on the field they had made a dreadful start, losing their opening 3 league games. The side kept supporters' interest alive by making it into the second round of the Milk Cup for the first time since 1975. They did it the hard way, being held by Chesterfield at home in the first leg, before playing above themselves at Saltergate and winning 2-0. The reward in round 2 was a money spinner over 2 legs with Division 1 glamour side Tottenham Hotspur, managed by Peter Shreve. When Spurs arrived at the Shea for the first leg, they did so as First Division leaders after winning at Aston Villa. Included in Spurs' side were household names such as former England keeper Ray Clements, current international Gary Mabbott and Garth Crooks. Town, with only 2 wins under their belts, lay 16th in Division 4, but the game was considered attractive enough for the BBC Spotlight Sports Night cameras to capture the action. Disappointingly for the BBC, there was no shock result. Though the Shaymen created a number of early openings, they were overwhelmed 5-1 with Crooks netting a hat-trick. The second leg was a formality for Spurs. They won 4-0 at White Hart Lane, but Town's bankers were happy with over £30,000 the club had made from the 2 games. In the league, Town were in a familiar position near the division's basement. After losing 1-0 to Darlington at the Shea on the 19th of October, Town's 4th consecutive league defeat, they hit rock bottom, 3 points adrift of the team above them. The directors knew they had to take action. At a board meeting 3 days later, they decided Mickey Bullock should go. It was not a decision they made lightly. The meeting itself lasted over 3 hours, but Bullock, after almost 9 years at the club, was disgusted at his treatment. He felt with some justification that he had been made a scapegoat for the club's poor position and left the club a bitter man. Billy Eyre was given temporary charge of the team, but he made it known he wanted the job on a permanent basis. A 3-1 victory at Colchester and a draw at Torquay did his chances no harm, but immediately after beating Mansfield to move off the bottom of the table, the directors unveiled the new manager as former Bradford City and Derby County coach Mick Jones. In a personal telephone call to John Crowther, Nottingham Forest boss Brian Clough had recommended Jones, saying he was the second best manager in the Football League, after himself of course. Mick Jones appointed Eyre as his right-hand man and made a good start. His first game was a 2-0 victory over non-league Goole Town in the FA Cup. The win was marred by a broken leg for Paul Kendall, and this was followed up by successive wins over Crewe and Port Vale, which lifted Town up to 17th. But then the good run ended. Despite taking Adrian Shaw on loan from Forest, he eventually signed for a 4-figure fee in March. Town lost at Burnley in the FA Cup and suffered 4 defeats in the league to slip once more into the re-election zone. Town's poor sequence was halted by a morale-boosting draw at Blackpool. The following week, the side pulled off one of the biggest shocks of the season by beating leaders Bury 4-1 at the Shea. But though bad weather saw Town lose their momentum, they put on a refreshing display in the Freight Rover Trophy where Jones blooded youngsters Robert Hurst, Paul Fleming, John Francis and Dean Martin. Town beat Darlington 4-1 in the first leg, but then, inexplicably, a more experienced line-up in the return was humiliated 7-0 at Feethams. Mick Jones was finding the going tough. He sought to bolster the defence by signing centre-half Steve Brooks from non-league Barrow and added firepower to the forward line with former Leeds United and Bradford City striker David McNiven, who had returned from a spell at Pittsburgh Spirit in Canada. But results hardly improved. The situation was not helped by attendances which barely topped the 1,000 mark. Some games failed even to reach four figures. Tranmere's visit was watched by just 914 and only 890 saw Torquay win 1-0. On the 20th of April, with Town lying next to bottom, Chairman Jack Turner decided to stand down. He would remain a director. John Crowther began his second spell at the helm with Roger Newby, his vice-chairman. The board by now consisted of 11. Its other members were Tom Dawson, Derek Wilkinson, John Robinson. Members were Tom Dawson, Derek Williamson, John Robinson, Tom McLean, Colin Wood, Eddie Walton, Dr. David Lord and Frank Hinchcliffe. I realise I've just mentioned some of those names twice and I must apologise for that. Some supporters quipped that the board 11 looked stronger than the actual team itself. For Crowther, it must have been like a recurring nightmare to see Town fighting against re-election yet again. The players raised hopes of avoiding this by winning their final 3 matches, which included a terrific 3-0 win at Stockport. Upon the final whistle in the last game, having defeated Swindon at the Shea on a Friday night, the Town supporters invaded the pitch and saluted their heroes. They wrongly believed their team was safe after moving out of the re-election zone. The following day, Southend beat bottom club Torquay 1-0 to leapfrog above the Shaymen. Shades of Wrexham 12 months previously. Town were condemned to another re-election bid on goal difference. The did you know for this chapter was only one player in Halifax Town's history had a surname beginning with the letter I, Willie Irvine.